Unconscious, should I go ahead and get started? Okay, great. Okay, so I do know that many are still coming in. I'll go ahead and kick us off. First and foremost, a very warm welcome to all of you and a sincere appreciation for taking the time to join us today. My name is Heather Sykowski. I am the Group Vice President looking after the EPC business with ABB. This will be the kickoff of our first master series, and it's an honor to invite Shri to join us. We're going to spend the next hour to go through adaptive execution. Maybe just a little bit about myself. 22 years in the industry, have worked across the entire energy value chain, have worked on projects all over the globe in all capacities, from the giga, the mega, to the small, again, all industries all over the world. One of the reasons why I'm in this field, and I think many of us, is we can feel the passion and the ability to make an impact. I think you get the exhilaration whether or not you're, in the sands of Saudi Arabia, or you're in Mozambique, Africa, or you're on the Gulf Coast of Houston, Texas. But when I reflect on that and I look at the engineering centers and the value engineering centers, we wanted to take a special kickoff and really recognize the importance of India and the offices that sit in a lot of the customers that we serve. Shri and I were talking earlier today, and I was just saying, it's almost like it's the nucleus, the epicenter of where everything happens. So again, it's a true honor. We appreciate your time. We look forward to going on a journey with you. I think as we look post-COVID, as we look at where we're at with the industry, a time of change, a time of transformation, energy transition, the ability to adapt is going to be what's going to give us all the advantage. So we're going to take some time today and step through that ability to adapt. Shri is our Director of Operations. He comes also with extensive experience, so I'll allow him to give a moment and introduce himself, and through this as well, sharing his particular experiences in certain sites and assets around the world where he actually applied certain philosophies, and the ability to bring it together when you look at automation and electrification is truly remarkable. So we're going to give you a glimpse on that today. Vinod is also here with us. Vinod will be participating in pulling together all of the questions that you might have. We've dedicated 45 minutes to this discussion. If you would be so kind, feel free to add any of your questions into the chat box. We will capture those and go through them with a lively discussion at the end. The session is being recorded, so we'll share that after the call. And I think with regards to safety, I think it's important for all of us just to ensure that we're recognizing the safety procedures within where we're at locally. But I think beyond that is for ourselves, your well-being, for your family. If you're in the office, social distancing. I think safety is at a whole new level. So now I think mostly make it personal, take care of yourselves, take care of your family. We like to take care of our employees and our customers. So I think with that, again, sincere appreciation. There's some additional individuals that you can't see on this call that have been a big support for making this happen. I'd like to recognize Varun and Milan for that activity as well. Two young professionals that come from engineering backgrounds that I have to say, I look forward to you all meeting them in due course, because it's the new generation as well that's making this so impactful. So with that, thank you. I turn it over to you, Shri.
Yep, thank you. I'm trying to share my screen now very quick. So if you guys can see my screen.
Yes.
Yeah, great. Good. Yeah. Thank you, Heather, and good morning to all. It's been a pleasure for us here at ABB to have this session. As Heather said, we really appreciate you guys taking time today and hearing us on this very key topic, which is on project execution and the transformation, what's happening, and we in ABB as what we are trying to achieve with this transformation in project execution. A very quick kind of intro about myself. I've been managing and executing projects in the field of industrial automation for close to 25 years now. Been a technical manager in multiple projects with automation as a main scope, providing expertise on process control, functional safety management, cybersecurity, system integration, virtualization, data analytics, and process optimization. My current area of interest has been to work with customers, EPCs, to achieve greater operational efficiency and productivity using digital technologies, and go through that transformation, a digital transformation on our project execution goals. Right. So that's been my current role, and I'm as Heather introduced, I'm a director here at ABB Energy Division. I'm located in Houston. There's a lot of energy within the team in ABB for us to work through this important initiative. And ABB as such has been investing a lot in not only innovating technologies, but also relooking and addressing the customers and the market challenges. So with that, the mission of Adaptive, or the motivation for us in Adaptive, is to kind of threefold. What we would say is it's more from leveraging the standardization and digitalization capabilities to improve collaboration and reduce project risks. Make sure there's an impact, manageable point of the late changes impact on projects, and also to keep the automation of critical path. So these are kind of a high level motivation when we started thinking about as what adaptive execution should cater for in managing capital projects. And with that, if we start looking at the current top trends in the market, we see there's a demand for sustainable energy. So the whole industry is going through a reduction in carbon, the carbon captures, and any reuse of carbon, molecules back in process, and looking for those sustainable energy development projects. With the recent pandemic, there's also a forcing to a new way of working. That's with kind of added to that is the digital growth, which has become a demand now. And also there's a focus towards the renewable energy, right? There is focus towards alternate energy resources and projects towards being able to be delivered to meet those renewable energy requirements from the market, from the segment, from the governments and the policies. So the market trend is towards these key kind of topics. In the pressure of capital projects, what we see as in planning capital projects, we face a number of challenges. The number one there being that immense downward pressure on the capex, right? Which means we have to work really hard than ever to justify our project economics and getting the fundings we need, right? There is also a push for sustainability, as we saw the market trend has never been, sustainability has been more important. It's driven by regulations, the code of public opinion, and also from the sentiments of the investors with specific environmental demands, right? And also, while we see this happening, the life cycle management, the extension of the operations facilities to become more digital, and how do we balance the reliability and the autonomy such that we can minimize risk and safety issues, but still deliver on expected return on investment, right? So the whole pressure on mounting on all functional areas of a project delivery today is what we see. And we also have the complexity and the unforeseen factors which affect externally to a project, which starting from a supply chain to resource issues, production delays, upswing on the material cost, interface management with multiple vendors, multiple package solution vendors, and the change in technologies and the tools, which is happening much beyond the project life cycle, right? And these are kind of external factors which does impact our delivery on projects. And what we see with these external factors affecting capital projects, we also see much an effect or a pressure or challenge on project management. While project managers do know what they are supposed to do in practice, but often they fail to follow a proper stage gate process, and that kind of allows ample opportunity to change course at key points, depending on what is best for the project. Hence, there is a lot of recognition to transform from our traditional project management methodology to adaptive project management that would help project managers to manage and deliver projects with a set of defined project goals, right? So with these pressure or challenges, what we see in the market on the capital projects, it's pretty well known in the industry that most of the projects routinely run over budget or behind schedule, right? Almost 2/3 of projects technically and operationally continue to exceed budgets. Almost 3/4 of projects miss scheduled deadlines, right? The above are some of the historical challenges which we see often, the projects trying to overcome that we have executed in the last 2 decades, right? But we still have opportunities to improve and add value. What would help us to get a better ROI from a solution provider standpoint, right? In addition to those existing challenges, there is also the newer challenges of how the whole engineering, design, and construction world is going through, with a modular construction, with multiple parties trying to deliver their part from different locations, and then we try to integrate them together as one single system or a platform. So driving significant project value improvements by being adaptable to changes influenced by some of these challenges is what made us to innovate this new execution model, as there is a need for a 360-degree approach that enables greater visibility across all layers of the project. So with these challenges in mind is when we looked at the current efforts has been, or the current execution model has been more looking towards as built to last. And when considering how these pressures and challenges can impact the various functional areas of a project, including controls, the electrical, infrastructure, mechanical, many organizations prioritize building a facility to last in terms of its structure and operation, right? But as part of the rigid contractual project methodologies, such as having a separate RFQ package or purchasing functional packages or systems and trying to secure the best available solutions at lowest possible cost, kind of puts into a challenge on the project to find an ability to integrate all the tailor-made solutions, and it becomes a challenge to the project at the end, right? So with these challenges, what we also fail, or kind of realize that it often the projects do have to go through this issue of not being able to be predictive or achieve the financial outcome. As a result, the organizations are able to accurately predict and achieve the planned results. But even when the funding or the FID is obtained, projects do suffer from lack of innovation and agility towards the project goals, and to ensure that there is a sustainability and high quality of the resources and we are producing in the project. So it also is difficult to get the visibility into the operation, because the data is spread across too many systems, leading to issues with ownership, governance, availability, and the accessibility of the data. So even if a facility is built to last, it's a question whether now are we able to dynamically transform alongside the market demands, what's happening, right? So with that in mind is where ABB comes with this adaptive execution, where we said, the adaptive execution is an end-to-end, a global project execution framework or a model that kind of integrates the expert teams, the new technologies, the shared learnings, the proven methodologies into one single streamlined project execution experience for all the stakeholders involved in a capital project. So it also means that we need the just-in-time concept or build to adapt rather than the build to last, right? So adaptive in a nutshell is about assembling the right elements of that peak experience for every person in the project every day without the need for a crisis, right? Hence, as a project team, we need ability to think and look around the corners and anticipate what's ahead and seize every advantage to improve the capex. So the whole framework and the execution model as part of adaptive execution has been designed with a thought in mind, having to consider those challenges and the pressures what we are seeing in the market, and that's to adapt to any large projects of today, right? And when we looked at the framework itself on adaptive execution, the goal was for us to be firmly believe that this requires a level of competitive advantage, which we would like to achieve through adaptive execution by looking at 4 key pillars or 4 key focus areas as what we'd like to call as the technology, the methodology, infrastructure, and the capabilities, right? And this will help us to deliver the 4 key PVIs, what we call as project value improvements, where the technology leads towards to give us the efficiency, the methodology addresses the effectiveness, the infrastructure helps us to collaborate on a single uniform ecosystem model, and the capability which kind of helps us to have the right people at the right scope at the right time, right? So these elements kind of characterize how adaptive execution is being developed and make sure that we are just not looking at only the products or technology, but looking through the methodology, the work process and standard operating procedures, looking at the platforms and systems which we deploy as part of the project and work through in the project. And then comes the integration and the adaptive skills as such, having to have the ability to, optimize the resource loading throughout the project lifecycle, right? So this helped us in creating that competitive advantage on multiple projects which we have been executing nowadays. And this is the de facto model which today ABB applies on pretty much most of the integrated projects what we have going through, right? And these 4 pillars kind of comes with a set of enablers. Now that's what the adaptive execution team does at ABB, is to go in and look in the market, look into the project requirements, and innovate those adaptive levers and kind of organize them across those 4 pillars so that a project of today, depending on the scope and the need and the requirement, would be able to go into this repository of enablers and use the proven, tested, proven, certified solutions into the project, rather than the project have to spend their man hours and effort to do the proof of concept or the proof of value, right? And that's what at adaptive execution we try to do is, with some of the samples, what I could talk about is having the standardized design, right? We have built over the best practices over the last 30 years of our experience, all the required standard design in delivering an automation scope, right? Having standardized workflows and procedures to meet a specific EPC or a specific segment, which is what is being developed. Having an ability with the smart IO, or what we call as a select IO, with extreme engineering, would give us that ability for us to decouple and lessen the dependencies between the application engineering and the hardware engineering scope of the project. So we have a set of enablers, and this list is, is not the full list, though we are keep continuously innovating and developing this enablers, going through and mapping them across right from the technology side, the methodology, infrastructure, and capability, and making sure that it's enriched continuously for projects to leverage and use them on a global level. So this has been an ongoing program. And when we look at, again, what's the difference when it moved from a traditional waterfall model to the adaptive execution model, we see that in a traditional model, we had typically going through a design phase and then get into the detailed engineering, manufacturing, internal test, factory acceptance test, and ship the system back for the EPCs and the contractors to take in the installation and commissioning work. Now, the same work with also the issues, what we saw, with pandemic and people having the limited ability to travel, and more and more EPCs looking for MOPEX, where multiple office execution capabilities becoming critical. We have come out and innovated that we would be able to host the entire control system platform in cloud. Thereby, we would be able to go through the entire design and prototyping and engineering phase on virtual cloud environment across with multiple parties, even outside ABB participating in that, including our EPCs, package vendors, our support partners, including the customers, to be part of that entire engineering phase. And also during the testing and the integration aspects of the project. So it kind of gives us an ability to have more time to give to the EPCs in your hand to come up with the right design information, so that you don't need to rush on the design information just because the contractual terms looking for a specific design freeze. So now we kind of, with adaptive, we are able to say that we don't need to have the traditional 1 or 2 single point design freeze, whereas we could have multiple design freeze based on different packages, which kind of helps us to do the modular delivery of approach. We would be able to have a unidirectional flow of data, design information coming from the EPCs into our control system group, so that we would be able to understand and package based on the design information. And we have a single source of truth, which we built across the information which is coming from multiple package vendors and EPCs, right? And that gives us all that ability with the cloud, that we could now do a continuous modular engineering and a continuous testing using our digital twin or simulation tools, what we call. So we have the virtual commissioning capability that you would be able to test the entire application without the real hardware being staged, right? The controllers and HMI is no more required at the module yard. We would be able to commission the smart IO using the smart commissioning tools. And you would see the end effect, right? We would be able to then bring in the right elements of both the hardware, the system side, and the application kind of coupled together. And that's, again, automatically done by the system as part of that extreme engineering. Now, all this facilitates in kind of gives you all a benefit of having your resources also being optimized. Unlike in the traditional model where we used to have set of team mobilized, even if the design information is not even ready for our review, or even it's been issued for our construction even before it's been issued for construction. So it does give more time in your hands to come to us with the right information at the right time. And with the automation available today on our tools, on our products and technology, and with the collaboration tools as part of our infrastructure, and with that agile capabilities, we would be able to still integrate and complete the engineering on time, on budget, right? So that's the kind of where the adaptive execution is kind of different from the traditional model, where we had to go through defined stage gate and defined phases, and which always had to happen that we have to go and redo or rework and come up with multiple change orders or variation orders, which kind of puts a pressure on the project itself. And now when you see it more from in a technical lens or an engineering lens, this is how the adaptive execution would look. As I said, I talked about the extreme engineering. So the very first aspect is we have kind of used the technology to help us to remove the interdependencies or dependencies between the hardware scope and the software and application scope. And this is not just for the process automation. We would be able to do the same for the electrical power management systems too, right? So that's the strength with ABB, which we have, is where we have a single control system platform with our 800XA, where we would be able to integrate process automation and electrical automation in this adaptive manner, where we could lessen the burden and the risk by having decoupling the design of software and the design of the hardware. And on the hardware side, we have made sure that we have standardized pretty much most of the deliverables, depending on the type of cabinets, the type of certifications. And we looked at the market, we looked at the different requirements, specifications of multiple EPCs, and come up with a global version of certain standard cabinets, which is now manufactured or kind of pre-engineered and pre-manufactured, tested and certified cabinets, which could be directly shipped to the module yard or site. So there's very less, or kind of what we like to call as a zero-based engineering and zero FAT time on those select IO smart junction boxes, which could be directly shipped to your module yard or site, which helps in your construction and commissioning activities on much earlier, right? So, and with also an ability to have early on loop checking, even as the skid or the module yard is moving to the actual physical site. So we would be able to support that loop commissioning activity so that we would be able to partially dice the complete loop, and the loop would be ready to, when it arrives at site, you are ready to directly start the functional loop check rather than to go through the entire chain of physical and mechanical completion at site, which is going to take more time from all of us, right? So this is the kind of overall concept with all the enablers which we talked about, from virtualized cloud enabled virtual systems, with the target system being bought over at the very end of the project, with extreme commissioning, with the ability to go and complete our engineering at module yards, and then do the integration at site, with the kind of flexible binding happening between the hardware piece and the software piece together. So, all this is, again, as I said, is being practiced in today's project. We have been delivering projects today in that model, and customers are happy, and we are able to see the value by which we are now able to really work through on much bigger scopes, managing the risks better, and work through more value-added solutions towards the operational side, rather than getting burdened on the engineering and the design aspect of it, right? And one of the biggest enabler with this post-COVID time, what we have seen is the cloud enablement. So we have the entire, cloud infrastructure, as we said, where we could completely host our control system platform, by which right from the basic design, even during the detailed design, we would be able to engage with you all to test and validate the application, and need not wait till the nth moment to come to the FAT to do the testing, right? So you would be able to engage with us as and when you get your design matured, and when we finish the engineering of that package, we would be able to immediately demonstrate that, and you have a 24/7 access to the control system at any point of your time, sitting from your home office to review the progress of our actual engineering, and you need not wait to see that until FAT, right? And that gives a lot of benefit on your resource mobilization and your planning, as you would have validated pretty much most of the basic specification requirements upfront before even trying to do that integration test. Right? And all this is done with absolute no travel. We don't need to spend all that project capex on all of us traveling together and coming and meeting at one point and doing the big, large FAT, right? And as I said, on the hardware front, since it's pretty much standardized and it comes pre-certified from our factory, whether it's ATEX or UL or CSA, so pretty much most of the cabinet designs, what we are coming out is kind of pre-engineered, pre-configured, pre-built and tested and certified. And it could be directly shipped as long as you have approved the design for us at the early stage in the basic design. It can straight away go into the manufacturing and deliver to site. So kind of zero engineering on hardware, right? So with that ability of on the technology and the products, we would also see that the project management is having more, time to really look at the risks in terms of interface, change management, and then provide more value add and visibility to the client. The project manager has more face time with you all, rather than getting hung up into the actual reporting of the progress and the status and issues in a project, which was a challenge for a project manager in a traditional model, which was pretty much plan driven. But when changes happen, people keep reworking on the plan again and again. So we see the schedules typically getting revised probably 30, 40 times in a project. And it was, again, a wastage of resource spending on that. Whereas with the agile project execution model, what we see is, since we are now able to work with you all in the same modular approach which you are heading towards, we would be able to also decouple and couple the engineering of modular applications on the required solution set, right? So it kind of gives us more flexibility, and we are also able to adapt to the changes what's happening, and we do not need to go on purchasing long lead items at very early stage, and kind of affects the cash flow in the project, right? So it kind of gives us that ability to move not just from a predictive project management, where we are now going towards more an adaptive project management, right? So all this kind of gives us an ability in the adaptive execution is how we execute and manage. Now, let us try to see a little bit on how adaptive execution also could help us to kind of what I like to call as shift to left and shift to right, where what else adaptive execution, or how else adaptive execution could help EPCs right from the feed or the define stage and all the way to the operate stage. So adaptive is looking, as we said at the beginning, it's more an end-to-end approach of the entire project life cycle. But again, we wanted to make sure that we address the design and conceptual needs at the right stage, right? And that's what we have done with adaptive, where we have stretched the adaptive execution model and made sure that the enablers would work through and help mitigating and identifying risks early on during the defined stage, and kind of help eliminate the value gap, and then pass it on to the execution with very optimum resource and optimum time, and being able to start up on going to the operate phase very quick, and being able to start up on time, and then give a life cycle care, which is what an operational excellence would need for. So when we look at each of these stages of define, execute, and operate, right? If I take the first stage, the define stage, it's like what would we would be able to do to streamline the feed effort and make change inherent to your process, right? And what's the benefit you would get by engaging adaptive execution in the feed stage, where the adaptive execution would be able to give you all that single point of responsibility with helping the EPCs, or we kind of stewardship the EPCs, and having that early involvement would help us also to help identify those value gaps, because you're talking about large projects with multiple package vendors, multiple even mini EPCs coming together with multiple systems into the scope, but then there's no one who's addressing the integration aspect and the risks involved in bundling the solutions and making sure that the data structures is being built right, so that the future operational excellence can be achieved, right? So having that early involvement capability, able to give you that fully integrated approach, and having that vision to the total cost of ownership, right? All this we would be able to do during the define or the feed stage, where we would be able to look into the scope, identify the needs, work through the suppliers whom you are selecting to, and it may not be everything be ABB solution, irrespective of whether it's another third-party package or another third-party solution. We are able to work with them and engage and use our tools, our infrastructure, our technology to work and support those suppliers too, right? So that's the end goal for us to act as a main automation contractor, right? And as we do this in the define, and as we saw in the execute phase, is where we kind of wanting to seamlessly integrate the solution, right? So once you have the streamlining and conceptualizing the scope, the value gaps, the risks have been identified, we know the solution, how it looks like, we have the system architecture, and as we get into the execute phase of the project, we would want to make sure that the integration is being considered at all aspects, right from whether it's alarm management to cybersecurity to product process optimization. And it's a kind of a whole holistic solution mix, right? And that's again is what we saw earlier with the traditional model. With the adaptive, we have that capability to get off those interdependencies and use the right enablers depending on the scope and the requirement of the project, and kind of help you all to have that schedule in your hand to be able to start up and commission on time, right? And because that's the time where we need most of our time is needed at site to making sure that things are working right and safe. And even before we really start up, wanted to make sure that all safety aspects is being considered, right? So the new approach kind of gives us that ability to integrate and deliver with a concept of continuous integration and continuous delivery model in adaptive. And this leads towards when we deliver the project and we are able to start up and commission on time, then comes a question in the mind is, what's all about this solution giving the value towards the life cycle management, right? And how it works and what, the customers, the end users would be looking to us as partners, both as MAC, as EPCs together, whether we are able to give the client a comprehensive customer care solution, right? And for which, again, ABB has a very exhaustive, service solution set, what we call as a software as a service, a my control system solution, where even with this control system platform moving to the site, and as we integrate things and do the startup and commissioning, we would be able to connect it up to our cloud-based my control system service, through which we will be able to monitor and update the required patch or required support remotely from our closest local office. So it's not that even after the system is either during or after commissioning, the system is not up to date, so that we have a continuous connection with our remote collaboration centers, by which we would be able to have 24/7 access to the actual physical system at site. And we have various architectures to work with, whether it has to be cloud enabled, depending on the client's risk appetite. We could also do an on-premise solution, so that we would be able to monitor cybersecurity or any obsolescence or technology updates which we need to do as we going through the startup and commissioning phase. And again, this has been addressed as part of adaptive execution, so that it's not an afterthought. It's been thought about right from the defined stage and execute stage in the project. So you see always there is always just before we get into in the next stage of the project, we are already making sure whatever the needs of the next stage is being taken care in the previous stage, right? So that's the concept which covers from adaptive. And as we kind of go through and hand off the facility to the end user, we wanted to make sure that it's digitally enabled for the client to build the required visibility to operate and optimize the business, what they are looking for, right? So it's a question of how we could help to improve the availability and the asset predictability, but at the same time you need to have that digital enablement which comes through in the operate phase. So as they start up the plant and it starts producing the required products, we wanted to make sure that we have the right solutions which could be embedded, kind of a plug and play over the same control system solution. So adaptive execution delivers the entire integrated control system platform, and with ABB Ability, which is our digital solution, kind of comes overlays on that on the control system or the process and electrical automation solution, so that you would be able to, depending on the client's need, whether it's optimization, whether it's analytical or operational support, it's maintenance, asset. So these solutions can be just enabled like a plug and play over the same architecture, so that there is no need for again us to build a system and map the data going through a different levels of architecture, right? So that's a concept where we have extended not just delivering the basic scope on the project, but extending all the way to the life cycle, and also making sure that the digital value is being added in our delivery model, right? Again, all this depends on the scope and how we would be able to, bring the solution set in the project delivery model. But the thing is, the project teams need not keep recreating and innovating these solutions, where as adaptive as one global team in ABB, we keep nurturing and building those enablers into the execution model, right? And last not the least, the sustainability is a big key requirement today in most of the facilities which has been built. And we wanted to make sure that the ABB Adaptive Execution lifecycle kind of also contributes towards the sustainability. So we talked about few enablers of being able to have a complete remote engineering, cloud-based testing, which kind of helps us to reduce our travel cost, reduce a kind of carbon footprint, make sure that the logistics cost is less instead of having multiple shipments of this material moving from the supplier to a integration staging location, and then having an FAT location, and then moving to a module yard and to site. We could now directly ship cabinets from our factory directly to the site location, right? And as there's no need for having a testing or inspection, because as I said, these would be pre-certified as per the industry standards. Throughout the evolution of the adaptive life cycle, we make sure there is a contribution towards the sustainability element, and that kind of contributes for that entire value chain, and it continues over to be part of our delivery model, right? So in overall, adaptive execution is more about what we like to, again I said, build to adapt, which kind of helps to give us, make the project economics really work for us, so that we stay within the capex and the opex aspect, the expectations, kind of have the standardized solution and build that operational excellence capability upfront and not after the fact, after the commissioning, and also make sure that the sustainability requirements is kind of being built into the solution right from the design stage. So it's kind of what we kind of feel that which is needed to deliver in today's capital projects, where these challenges and issues is kind of siloed and broken down, and projects do not have ability to deliver in a consistent, standardized manner, which is what we want to address in adaptive. That it kind of gives it ability to address all these challenges and pressures, so that we would be able to provide this expected result, right? So again, with adaptive execution today, ABB has been delivering projects. In fact, we have a recent project, a chemical project for Baker Hughes, which we had customers from Singapore, Saudi, and our Indian office, our operations center, the High Value Engineering Center in Bangalore, work together remotely on the cloud all through the FAT phase. And in spite of the pandemic, we were able to deliver the system on time. So there has been currently few projects which we are running on through this exactly same model, and we have been able to see these such results of being able to really reduce schedule with having a capex savings, depending again on the scope and the type of enablers we apply, and being able to be upfront, make the system ready for startup and commissioning, right? So there's much more benefits and value realization today we are able to see with adaptive execution, and this has been the need of the day, and it's a journey. It's not that we have just matured everything, and there are new technologies which we are looking through, right from the new standards from OPAF to the modular test platforms, from NAMUD standards. We are looking at how we could integrate our IO or our system database with smart completion. So we are talking to Hexagon Smart Plant Instrumentation to develop a solution by which we would be able to digitally integrate our commissioned system information into smart completions. So there are evolving technologies which Adaptive is working through and making sure that we would be able to make these solutions off the shelf available for projects to deliver, rather than the projects have to need not create any of these solutions from scratch. And that's the end goal, whereby we will be able to go and show EPCs and customers that we could bring a real change in the capex reduction, and also to manage the risks. So it's, capex reduction is more a byproduct. The goal has been more for us to make the entire execution model more efficient, kind of reduce the risk, and take the automation off the critical path. That's the mission statement. And the byproduct of that is what we see is a capex reduction, a schedule compression, and being able to deliver the system on time, so that you guys have enough time to do your site and mechanical completion work at site, and not to go through the rush through, or have to have more resources spiked up at the site and commissioning phase, right? So it kind of gives the overall aspect of adaptive execution. Again, we would be able to have specific detailed workshops on use case basis, on a project opportunity basis with you all. We would be able to take a specific use case and demonstrate some of these levers, and also the technical aspects of how it fits into our execution workflow with the EPC's interface, working through right from the design all the way to the startup and commissioning. So we have a very detailed adaptive execution swim lane, which kind of addresses those elements of every deliverable which goes in a project, and how we have used those enablers to make sure that these deliverables could be created efficiently and being effective, right? And with that, with also having a collaboration for environment which we have created with integrated project management, with centralized document management, with a cloud-enabled infrastructure. So those are kind of infrastructures which we are putting into place together. And today, customers and EPCs are benefiting from that. And with the post-COVID situation, we think it's going to accelerate this demand, and hence ABB is ready for that. So probably with that, I would go to some Q&A if people have some questions. But as I said, we welcome more exchange and interactions with you all, even our one-on-one sessions. We really welcome that request if you have.
Maybe if I could just add to end as well. First of all, thank you very much. And I know this is just a glimpse, but we felt it was important that you could start to see the key aspects that are really going to transform and drive that value. And as I think about that last slide you shared, when we look at the 20 to 30% reductions or optimizations, we all know that our customers are asking for that today. So our shared end customers are expecting that because of the climate, because of the situation, we truly can deliver that when we look at this type of methodology and execution. Another point that I appreciate that you addressed is that we've done it, we've delivered it, fully in the cloud. It's worked well, and I think it's important that all of us ensure that we continue to utilize these technologies and these enablers that we've created together, instead of maybe shifting back when we're all flying around the world again, that we have this ability. Let's ensure that we're good stewards and we help and continue to transform. And then the last piece is even looking at some of the pre-feeds that those projects have possibly slowed down. What can we start doing if we look at a different methodology and adoption for some of those projects in preparation, where we'll start to see them released. So just a couple adds from my side. And thank you. Vinod, I know that you've been capturing some of the questions. If you would be so kind and read those out, and we'll make sure that we answer all of them during this session. And just as Sri said, we will ensure that we have some follow-up.
Thanks a lot, Heather.